Hello and welcome back. As promised, today we're gonna discuss some very interesting ideas launched by Mr. David Pattinson. Hi David, and thank you for being here.
Good to see you again.
So we're gonna talk now about this social contract between men and women that you've so passionately discussed about and you got us intrigued, and I would like to know more about it. So I would like to take step by step and I will read a couple of statements that you've said, and I'd like to know more about it. Is that all right for you?
Yeah, this is my proposals for the new social contract.
Great. So the first category is the no-fault divorce. So you said that if women are to have no-fault divorce, men must have a prenuptial agreement that is legally binding. This marriage should lay out marriage expectations from the outset, as well as clearly state division of both current and future assets in the event of divorce.
Exactly right. I mean, any kind of business deal you do, let's say you take out a loan to buy a building, the lender is going to want to know if you could repay back that money. The building you buy, you're going to get a surveyor and a lawyer in to make sure that building is on sturdy ground and it has no contamination, or it's likely to last for the amount of time you expect it to last. So what you're buying, you've done your due diligence, you've got full disclosure over. And we do this with all types of business deals. If I go to the Mercedes dealership and want to take out a convertible, they're going to want to ask for some hard money up front, and they're going to want to see that I've got the ability to pay for that vehicle over the length of term that's either leased or financed for. But of course, in marriage, we don't have any of this stuff. We just go into the marriage expecting it to last for life. 5 years later, when the man's getting sued for a no-fault divorce, he's getting to a level where his standard of living is not only worse than it was in the marriage, it's worse than it was before he was married. I mean, you look at someone like me, my life's pretty good at the moment. But if I was to marry you, people would say, well, Alexandrina's a total babe, marrying her is a no-brainer. But of course, if we were to get divorced, I would want my life to go back to the good level it's at now. I wouldn't want it to be 10 times worse. So prenuptial agreements can lay out expectations, and they can protect both parties and set expectations so that in the event of divorce, people are well protected.
So do you think it's a wise decision to treat marriages as a risky business?
Well, it's risky if there's no legally binding contract between the parties. If there's a legally binding contract between the parties, the risk is heavily mitigated. But of course, we're not doing a deal between the parties, where the parties are getting married and then we're deferring future decisions to the state. And what they do in marriage laws or in divorce laws is they make it current to the divorce laws at the time. So you and I could get married in 2019, the marriage laws are what they are, divorce laws are what they are. But of course, if we get divorced in 2035, we don't know what the divorce laws are going to be there. It might be men lose 100% of their assets. And of course, they don't, we don't have any legally binding prenuptial agreements. The divorce lawyer or divorce judge in the family court can just say, this is the situation, we're making it retroactive to the time you were married, and I'll be saying, this wasn't the situation when I got married, and they're saying, tough, doesn't matter, this is the law as it is today, you've got to obey it.
Mm-hmm. And do you think this is something that both men and women should agree?
Well, women should, I think rational women would agree with it. But of course, if women are benefiting from divorce to the rate they are, they're benefiting from the ambiguity of the lack of legal structure. If you take out a mortgage, you have a very clear set of legal conditions that are legally binding. Whereas if there's no contract and I go to a bank and borrow £1 million, and then they say, hey, David, can you pay this back now? And I say, I don't think I really want to. The bank has no recourse to get the money back. If they have a legally binding contract, they can come and take my house or take my business or whatever it is to recoup the loss. So, if you're going to get into a relationship, any relationship, where it's business or romantic or personal or family, having a legally binding contract, is going to protect both parties. It's also going to hold both parties accountable for being honest.
Also a very important part within this new social contract between men and women is the consent. you said that if women are to require affirmative consent for sexual relations, men must require affirmative consent for parental investment and financial support. Should this not be given by men, women would have no legal recourse for financial support from the father. Now, taxpayers should no longer be obliged to financially support the children of singles mother either.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. I'm a big proponent of strong families, and children growing up with both the mother and the father heavily involved in their lives. What happens now is you have women getting pregnant out of wedlock, and the man is obligated to pay for the child, even if there was no conversation about whether the man wanted to become a father or whether he was willing to invest in a child for 18 years. The woman makes the decision in a vacuum, says to her boyfriend, guess what, I'm pregnant. But they've had no conversation about whether the father wants to be a father or wants to invest in this relationship with this woman over the long term. Now, this isn't happening all the time. I'm talking about in the instances where it is happening. And, it foments mistrust between men and women, and it's the man is obligated to pay for that child, whether he wants to or not, by the state. If he does not have the financial means to do so, British taxpayers come in and pay for that, woman's child, even though they made no independent decision about whether they wanted that child born. The mother made the decision she wanted to have a child, and then she wants someone else to pick up the tab. But of course, she hasn't asked the payers before she got pregnant.
So should they sign an agreement?
Well, the thing is,
beforehand?
of course they should. If we've got to have affirmative consent for women to consent to sexual relations, which is what the Crown Prosecution and feminism says, surely men have to consent to paying financially for a child. So if they make that decision up front, they put it in writing to the woman, they say, yeah, if you get pregnant with my child, I'll financially support the baby, and that's fine. But if they have not given that consent, then, why should they be obligated to pay if they don't want to? And the reason I'm saying that, people will say, well, the only guy who would say that would be some kind of bad guy. Why women need consent for sexual relations, so surely men need consent for financial support of the child. That's an equal social contract. That's what I'm proposing.
Mm-hmm. And should this consent be made before?
Everything should be made before.
Before the woman gets pregnant.
Absolutely. You could have some sort of register where men sign up to it. So they say, if you get pregnant with my child, I've agreed to support that child. But if the men haven't signed the register, then if a woman gets pregnant with that man's child, she can ask the man to support it, maybe he will, but he's not going to be coerced into supporting it. We want to disincentivize women getting pregnant with men that either are not interested in being fathers, who are not financially able to support fathers, and then the taxpayers have to come in and pick up the slack. We need women getting pregnant with men who are invested in the relationship, who are invested in fatherhood, and who have the means to support that child. Yeah, that's what we want.
Mm-hmm. Also, another important part in this social contract is abortion. And the statement goes like this: if women are to have the autonomous option of abortion, men should have the same autonomous option to opt out of financial support for a child carried to term, should they not wish to play a parental role. The father should void all custody and rights in this scenario.
Yeah, I think that's a fair deal. I mean, I'd like to say I'm not in favour of abortion. That's why I brought it up. The point I've just made prior to this is similar. The man needs to be giving consent to, parental investment. If he does not wish to provide that, he voids his custody benefits from the child. The reason I say this, Alexandrina, there's an assumption that there's an obligation, social obligation on men to always have to pay for the child, and then now legally state mandates it. So you're forced to paying. If you don't have the money, you get the opt-out provision if you're on welfare or if you're just dead broke or whatever, you're a felon. That's why we have it. But of course, the thing with abortion is women make the decision on their own to abort the baby. The father has no say, the baby has no say. Whereas if the woman says, no, I'm going to have the baby, no problem, we then need the men to come in and pay for it. He does not get any choice. I met a girl recently at a bar. She was telling me she was pro-choice. That means she's in favour of the right to have an abortion. So I said, well, what about if the father opts out of his right to pay for the child? She says, no, I don't believe in that. So I said, well, I thought you were pro-choice. She said, yeah, I am. I'm pro-choice for women. I am not pro-choice for men. If you're going to have an equal social contract, we're going to have women being able to make a choice. Men need to be able to make a choice as well. You can't have one making a choice and the other no choice.
Mm-hmm. So you see that right now men are kind of trapped?
Well, the reason we have the bad social situation we have is because women weaponize pregnancy. They say to their boyfriend, guess what, I'm pregnant. They're using an emotional weapon to entice that man into a relationship who might not necessarily want to be in a long-term relationship with a woman. But because she's pregnant with his child, you know, he'll either say one of two things. Yeah, okay, I'll marry you, or no, I won't marry you. I'm just gonna leave. And of course, in that situation, the woman will just abort the baby. She'll say, yeah, this guy's gone. I didn't like him anyway, so I'll just abort the baby. So women are getting, an out. When if we did not have abortion, the woman would be obligated to find the right guy. She would be obligated to be in a stable relationship with a man before having children, because there will not be any financial provisioning for the child, without that factor being met. I mean, women go out and get pregnant with some guy they just met at the bar 20 minutes ago, rather than, date the man, vet the man, have their parents vet the guy, get married, have a house, then get pregnant, so the baby's coming into a really secure state.
Yeah, but let's agree that usually when things like this happen, women getting pregnant from someone they met a couple of minutes ago, it's not something that they choose. Of course it is.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, absolutely
it's
it is. I mean, if they're not taken, no, it's not an accident. Women present the impression that it's an accident, but it's not an accident. It's deliberate. They're trying to entice the guy to be in a relationship with them, so they don't take the birth control medication, they don't take the morning after pill, they have a sexual relationship during the time of their or their menstrual cycle, where they're most likely to get pregnant, where they know that they are. And it's a deliberate effort on the part of the woman to get pregnant, and then tell society, oh, this was just some accident, I couldn't help it.
Talking about paternity,
sure.
You also mentioned that in order to prevent paternity fraud, all children must undertake a DNA test at birth to determine paternity, and under no circumstances should a man be legally obliged to provide financial support for a child that is not his, unless he expressly volunteers to do so.
Absolutely right, yeah. I mean, I think what happens is, in some cases, this doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more often than people think. A woman will get pregnant with a guy she deems to be more physically attractive or having a higher gene stock than another man, but then another man has got more money, or her husband's got more money, so she'll pass the child off as someone else's child, some other father's child, some other man's child, when it's not another man's child, it's the other man's child. So it's unfair for children to grow up not knowing who their biological father is. We know who the biological mother is because she's given birth to the child, but we need to prevent paternity fraud from happening, and we need to, rather than put men and women in the difficult position of insisting on a paternity test at birth, we just make it mandatory. So every child's given a paternity test. We know at birth who the father is, and that father is then, legally obligated to pay child support for that child, rather than some other man having to pay child support for that child when the child's not his.
All right, so you're saying if the father is indeed the biological father,
well, we know who the biological father is.
Pay.
Yeah, he should. Well, he should be. He should absolutely, unless his pre-pregnancy opted out of doing so. If pre-pregnancy he said, yes, if you get pregnant with my child, I will financially support it. The child's born. We know it's that guy. Yeah, he's paying.
But can you imagine a man saying, no, in case you get pregnant, I will not pay it?
Well, that's up to each individual man, isn't it? Men have the right to not have children if they don't want to have children. So do women. Women have the right to not have children if they don't want to have children, and of course they mandate it through abortion laws.
I see. You also mentioned custody. And you said that in the event of parental separation, both men and women are entitled to 50-50 shared custody of their children. There are no expectations to this rule.
Yeah, no expectations whatsoever. Now, what women will say is if they don't want the father of their children to have custody, they'll say this is an abusive guy, this is a bad guy, he attacks the children, he attacks me, we can't have the children anywhere near him, I need to have custody, full time. And this is where this sort of false allegation epidemic has originated from, through child custody, and the courts have pandered to women and allowed it. But if you say no exceptions, if the guy is a bad guy or an abusive guy, there's no exception. So what this is going to do is train women to have children with men that are fully vetted. If the guy's got a problem with violence, if the guy's got a problem with drug and alcohol addiction, if the guy's got a problem with crime and delinquency and bad stuff, she probably shouldn't be having a child with him because he's going to have 50% custody of it. If you have a guy that's well behaved, no criminal record, has a good job, has good judgment, you like him, your family like him, everyone likes him, he's a good guy to have children with. So that's what we need to do. We need to train women to vet men properly. They can't just have a child with some guy they met at the bar or the beach bar in Ayia Napa, and then just going to keep full custody of the child for life. The guy's going to have no rights whatsoever over his children. Men deserve equal parental rights than women have.
Do you know something about how these issues were treated during Alison Saunders?
Well, Alison Saunders isn't really directly involved in the family courts. She's involved in the criminal court. She's head of the Crown Prosecution Service. So these points I've made here are related to kind of gender relations and the family court, really making sure it arbitrates equal rights for men and women. So Alison Saunders, I'm sure, would disagree with all the things I've just said. She doesn't want equal rights for men and women. She wants one set of rights for women and pretty much zero rights for men because she's a feminist wacko. But, her jurisdictional authority as head of CPS was not really directly related to these issues now.
Mm-hmm. So you think she would not approve of
I very much doubt it. Yeah, I don't think Alison Saunders is my biggest fan.
You're not her biggest fan.
I'm not her biggest fan, but I don't think she's my biggest fan either. No.
I see. Now, tell me more about this new social contract between men and women.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because I want good gender relations, and because the social contract has got so out of whack that men don't want to invest in relationships with women anymore because they know they don't have any rights over the family anymore. They used to have a lot of rights over the family and were invested in or incentivized to build strong families. But now they're not. Also, the sexual revolution has led to women being able to control pregnancy much more and delay pregnancy much more, prevent it completely if they wish to do so. And abortion laws and no-fault divorce laws have given women huge control over the birth and of the control of the children. And it's a tool to weaponize against men, and it should not be. Men deserve the same rights over their children as women have. And, I want to incentivize rights for men, but I also want to incentivize women getting into stable relationships with the right men and having children growing up in stable households, stable families, and building strong social bonds and creating a strong country. And that's what we've got so far away from, and that's what I want us to get back to, yeah.
Do you think feminists would agree on this?
I don't think feminists are going to agree with anything I've said because they're not interested in an equal social contract. They're interested in superior rights for women, inferior rights for men, and a lot of the most militant feminists are not invested in the family. They are they are unmarried. They are single people, and they are not interested in investing in any sort of family relationship now. So I am, and that's why I'm speaking in favor of these ideas. Yeah.